Hello, smart money traders. Kenneth Unaji here at Populous Trading. Welcome to today's class. In today's class, we'll be talking about support and resistance. Yes, I just called you smart money traders, but have one thing at the back of your mind, okay? Support and resistance remain the very foundation on which every other strategy or every other trading approach is built upon. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're an SMC trader or an SCT trader, or you use trend lines, you use indicators. All right, it doesn't matter the trading style you are using. All right, as long as you are in this market, you must make reference to support and resistance, because it's one of those ancient landmarks that we actually have to always respect no matter the strategy you are using. Okay, so come along with me, as today in this class we are going to be breaking down support and resistance. All right, stay tuned and please keep sharp so that you don't miss any points in this class today. All right, so let's start with a simple definition of support and resistance. Okay, what you need to understand about support and resistance is that support and resistance is majorly one of the institutional reference points on the charts. Okay, like I said, it's an ancient landmark. Okay, so all reference points of every strategy usually actually make reference to institutional reference points. For instance, we have supply and demand, we have trend lines. Okay, we have trend lines, we have fair value gap, mitigation blocks, breaker block, liquidity void, other blocks, hold high and hold lows. For as SMT traders, we already know that all these right here, okay, all these right here are actually SMC concepts. Okay, like I mentioned in our intro, that support and resistance is one of those institutional reference points. Okay, and every other trading strategy actually make the reference from the support and resistance. Okay, whether they trade it directly or they trade it indirectly. Okay, but you need to also understand that over time, support and resistance have moved from being just a line on the chart, okay, to being actually an area or a zone. Okay, so no matter what you are using, okay, whether be it Elliott wave, okay, be it the almighty trading strategy or whatever you want to call it, but you always make reference to support and resistance areas on your chart. Okay, so just see it as something like a line on the chart. Okay, and then price comes to bounce off, go down, go up, go down, and above, sometimes bounce off the line and then come down over here, bounces off the line and then keeps going. However, just bear it at the back of your mind right now that it is a line on the chart and it has actually evolved into being an area or a zone on the chart. Okay, so I'm going to be making some illustration right here about support and resistance. I hope you've not forgotten your basic mathematics in school, your basic geometry, trigonometry, okay, because it's going to come in handy here. But if you're not a math lover, okay, don't be scared. It's just a very simple line on the charts, okay? So, of course, we know that we have this line here, the vertical line, to be our y-axis, okay? And then we have this line right here to be our x-axis, which defines time. And this one right here defines price, okay? So, in between price and time is actually a diagonal line that actually splits this chart into two. Okay, so this is both price and time moving diagonally. So there are actually three lines, okay, of primary concern when it comes to support and resistance. Okay, we have the vertical line right here, we have a diagonal line, and then we have a horizontal line. Now this way it comes in. Support and resistance are majorly horizontal lines on the chart. Okay, every other trader must always make reference to a horizontal line. Say a horizontal line, of course, we know is the line on the 180 plane. Okay, and then so this line on the 180 plane can actually be a support, a supply and demand zone. It can be a fair value gap. It could be a breaker block. Okay, it could be a rejection block, an all-time or an all-time high or an all-time low. But it is a horizontal line. But for the focus of this class, okay, we'll be measuring on support and resistance. Okay, so like I said, support is actually it's a horizontal line drawn on the chart in which price will actually bounce off, okay, all right, over time and then make all this move. Okay, so in the class ahead, we'll be talking about things like market structure, top-down analysis, and then to see how we can actually bring them all together and then see how we can trade the market from these definitions. Okay, so majorly, all right, so now I'm going to be looking at another illustration here. So right now we'll be starting with support. Okay, so support. Okay, going forward, I'm gonna be mixing two words, okay, which is support area or support zone, or resistance area or resistance zone. Okay, I'll majorly be looking at it from the point of just being a line on the chart. Support and resistance is not just a perfect line on the chart. No, it is an area where buyers and sellers actually come in to push price up or push price down. So look at like this. Okay, you have this line right here. Okay, can we see this? Okay, and then we now see price making a push to downside and then going to the upside. So support zones are actually like a floor of a building. Okay, so let's imagine a house. All right, we have the floor of the house and then we have the ceiling of the house. Okay, so now the floor will actually serve as the support, and then top, the which is the ceiling, actually serves as the resistance. So this is actually price in between. Okay, the roof between the ceiling and the floor. So what happens is that this floor right here prevents price from actually breaking down, going under the house. Okay, so price comes here and bounces off to the upside. So we have this point here to be the support. Okay, and then this is where buyers are actually gathered. Okay, waiting for price to buy at a very discount and agreeable zone so that they can get a better value for their money when they buy. So at support, you actually find buyers waiting to enter the market to push the market to the upside. So think of resistance like the ceiling of the house, all right, which is price now being this ball here, and then price coming all the way from the bottom. It's actually coming from a support at the bottom right here, okay, and then making all this push to the upside, and then price bouncing off this area and then headed to the downside. Always put something at the back of your mind. Support and resistance is not a perfect area or a perfect zone. It's not a perfect mass. It's not a perfect calculated zone. All right. It is just an idea that okay, price buyers, sellers coming at this to this point right here may start taking off their orders, and then buyer and sellers will come in to this place here. That's buyers are coming into the market, all right, and then when they hit a ceiling, which is a resistance zone, they now take off their orders, and then sellers come in and push the price lower to the downside. So back to our illustration here, okay? This is the house, all right, and then we have the ceiling right here, which is the whole of this place right here. So sellers are actually gathered at this point right here, waiting for price to get here, and then they make a push of price to the downside by actually absorbing the orders of the buyers to go down to the downside. So imagine price being here, this ball right here. So from buyers, the ball keep going up, down, up, up, and then when it gets to the ceiling right here, the ball hits the ceiling, a resistance, an obstacle, and then now push to the downside or anywhere price may intend to go in the coming days after price actually bounces off this ceiling right here. Okay, so there you have it. All right, so from here we'll be headed into the charts and see how we can have a practical view, a practical application to all what we've been saying about support and resistance. So here you have with me the yen basket on the monthly time frame. Okay, this is a naked chart. You always want to start with a very naked chart, and then from there you start marking off your zones. Okay, so the first point of call is to pick out your line tool. Okay, if you're using the trading view, all right, I'm gonna bring out my toolbox right here. Okay, can we see this here? This line right here, this point right here. Okay, this horizontal line. Okay, you click on it, all right, and then you come and mark. Okay, and then I'll put my markings. I'll put my markings right here also. So what I like to do is to always mark 3 resistance or support zone at every given point, okay? And then after some time, I start modifying and amplifying it, okay? But I always like to start with 3 lines every time on the chart, okay? So remember I told you how over time, support and resistance lines have actually become support and resistance zone, okay? Which is actually a better approach to trading support and resistance instead of just looking at it like a stack line on the chart. Okay, so then the other tool you are going to need is this tool right here. Okay, on your trading view, the rectangle view, the rectangular tool. Okay, and then you bring your toolbox down here, and then you want to come and mark out these zones. Okay, and then you can either duplicate this to the upside, all right, and duplicate this to the downside. Okay, so now why did I mark off these zones here, right here? Okay, you want to mark out this zone based on the information you have, and information you have is going to be about valleys and peaks. Okay, what are valleys and peaks? All right, so let me be doing a little illustration about valleys and peaks right here. Okay, if we come down to this point right here, okay, now you have price actually moving from the downside to the, I mean, from the downside going to the upside, and then you have this. Okay, this is a little bit of market structure. Okay, so this is not a waste of time. All right, and then we see price doing the whole of this coming down. Okay, so we're going to leave it at this point right for now. Okay, so now what do we have? We can see all this price action going to the upside and to the downside. Okay, and then so here, this is what I'll call a peak. All right, I'll call here a valley. I'll call here a peak. I'll call here a valley, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let me just put this right here for illustration. A valley, and then I'm going to call here a peak. So what you want to do now is this, okay? The reason why I mark off this point on the line right here, okay, is to actually mark off this peak right here, and then we have a valley here. Okay, we have another peak right here. We have a valley here. We have another peak right here. And then probably back to this valley at this point here. So we have another peak right here. Okay, so you want to see a place where price actually had a sharp movement. That price came to that point and then had a very sharp U-turn to the opposite direction. All right, so we had price coming all the way to the downside here and then making a push up and then down and then this and then all the way to this and then this. Okay, so don't worry about this. You're always going to have a reference point. Like I said, institutional reference point. You're always going to have a reference point from which you are going to draw your support and resistance. Okay, don't forget that we're actually working with historical data. We are banking on the fact that once price get back to these areas, okay, there's going to be a reaction, and then from those reaction we now form a bias to whether we're going to be buyers or we're going to be sellers in the market. Okay, so now don't be worried if your annotations on your chart is messy. Don't be looking for perfection at this moment. All right, all you want to do is to practice marking off these zones. All right, just like I've done. This is years of practice for me. All right, so I didn't get here just today. Okay, it is over time that I've been able to build the knack and the intuition to know where price is going to react from, looking at support and resistance. Okay, so right now, after marking your zones, okay, you want to now see what price is going to do when price gets to all of these points here. Okay, so look at this point here now. At this point, price is actually acting on a resistance. Okay, at this point, it's acting as a support. So I'm going to put another annotation right here. Support. I'm going to call this support. And then I'm going to call this place resistance. So we have here to be resistance, okay? And then we have here to be support. And then we have here to be resistance also. Okay, So that's what we have on this chart right here. Here, this point here, we have here as support, and then we have here as resistance. We have here as resistance again. That's price coming all the way to this point here, breaking down this support, and then going up. That's turn resistance, and then coming to this point here where we have support again, and then price pushing to the upside as resistance. Okay, so there you have it for this chart. So I'm going to be pulling out another chart so that we can have a better understanding of what support and resistance actually looks like. Okay, so this is a chart of the pounds JPY, the 4-hour chart. All right, and then so we're going to be marking up the support and resistance of this chart right here. Okay, so what you actually want to look for, okay, like I said, is troughs and valleys. First of all, you want to look at places where price actually reverse from. Okay, for instance, here you can see this place right here, this place right here. So like I said, over time you're going to get used to all this. Okay, and then we have another point right here of a valley, of a peak. Okay, we have another peak right here, 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 a peak right here, we have a valley right here, we have a valley right here. Okay, so now this all these zones are actually poking out at you. All right, so what you want to do is to look for the most obvious turning points on the chart. That's the secret here. Look for the most obvious turning points. Okay, so after I've marked all these areas, okay, then what we want to do is to come to that our rectangular tool. Okay, let's start with the horizontal line. You want to mark up this zone where you see price actually cutting off a lot of, price actually coming to have some difficulty in actually breaking, that point, or actually bouncing off from that point. Okay, then you have another point at this point here. Okay, and then I'm also going to mark this point right here. Okay, like I said, I always like to draw the first three most obvious points on the chart. And one mistake you must learn to avoid when you're drawing support and resistance is that you have to mark out the most obvious points. Okay, if not, you are going to have what we call analysis paralysis. Okay, where you have too many lines on your chart and you don't know which one is which, and then you now get confused, thereby having the term analysis paralysis. That's what you want to avoid. Okay, so now, like I said, support and resistance are not just lines on the chart. Okay, they're actually zones or areas. So you want to come down to that's your rectangular tool, you pick it, and then you want to come and mark out these areas right here. Okay, so you can duplicate this, and then you bring it up here, and then you bring it up here. Okay, now there's something I want to draw to your attention. All right, like I said, support and resistance are not perfect zones on the chart. Okay, you can see that at this point right here, price actually bounced off this zone right here, but price came at this point here, price came, did a little bit of shaking off before going to the downside. So this line here is still, this area here is still valid, even though price had a little push up to the upside, just like we have here, a little push to the upside, but price still actually returned. So the zone is actually here. Well, the thing is that if you give this chart to 10 traders, they're going to get different results of support and resistance. Okay, but the most important thing is that you stick to the fundamentals and make sure that at least whatever point you're drawing on the chart have a minimum of 2 points marked to consider it a valid support and resistance zone. Okay, those are the things you actually want to check on your box. Okay, so now we saw price doing the whole of this, bouncing off here, bouncing off here, and bouncing off here. Okay, and then we can see price actually reacting from all these zones right here, right here, and right here. Okay, like I said, you can see that I actually mark multiple points. So once it actually solidifies your confidence that a point, a zone may hold, a support and resistance zone may hold on the chart, is the fact that we have many testing of that zone, and over time we see that that zone is actually holding price to, to, let's say, to ransom. That's not allowing price to actually penetrate it, or making allowing price to bounce off it, for traders to actually have that confidence to trade from those zones. Okay, so going forward, now we can see that we actually have these clear points here. Okay, so we actually have here price actually acting here clearly in a very clean fashion, and then we have price acting here in a very clean fashion also. We also have price acting here in a clean fashion. All right, so going forward, there are things to be hearing, things like liquidity sweep. Okay, you'll be hearing things like fake breakout and the rest. Okay, but for now, our primary concern in this class is to see how we can actually mark support and resistance on our zone. So do yourself a favor, pull out a clean chart, all right, and see how you can actually mark these zones. Okay, now the thing is this: there's one primary thing that you must put at the back of your mind, that yes, even though we draw these lines on the chart, okay, the number one thing that confirms price is price itself. It is price that will tell us if a zone is valid or not. Your annotation on the chart may be valid, but price remains the judge that will validate if the zone you mark is actually authentic. Okay, so you must remain flexible and see how you can actually apply intuition over time. Okay, like I said, these things come with practice. Okay, so now having said that, let us look at some do's and some don'ts when it comes to support and resistance. Okay, so number one, I'm going to be doing some right up here. So number one, okay, do not draw many lines, too many lines on the chart. Okay, and then number two, all right, you must stick to the most obvious zones, the most obvious zones on the chart. Okay, and then also put at the back of your mind that it's that support and resistance is are not perfect zones. Number four, price is king. Price is king, meaning that no matter your opinion, okay, no matter your opinion, no matter how fantastic you've drawn your lines on the charts, okay, price will be the one to confirm if what you've drawn on the charts, okay, is actually going to hold. Okay, whether it is support or be it resistance, price will be the one to um, confirm if what you've done is authentic. All right, so what we want to do is that when price gets to all these zones, right, say we just don't trade them off. Okay, we wait for what we call confirmation. All right, so you pick a higher time frame, mark your zones, and then you go down to a lower time frame to see if price is going to confirm those zones before you enter the market. But that's for another class. All right, in that class, that's what we're talking about, top down analysis. So from top down analysis, you'll be able to mark your zones from a higher time frame and then work your way down through to a lower time frame and then take an entry. Okay, so that summarizes it for now. Don't forget that no matter the strategy you are using, all right, you must actually apply support and resistance in all of your approaches, be it Elliott Wave, be it SMC, be it ICT trading, whatever it is, all right, you always make reference to support and resistance. So guys, take some time, pull out a clean chart, try to practice what you learned here, because that's the only way you're going to perfect your craft when it comes to support and resistance in this market. So there you have it, guys. Take time and look at this. All right, have a wonderful week ahead, and I hope that you practice very well. So guys, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to like this video, and don't forget to also hit the notification bell. So because over time we are going to be bringing out more videos that will help your development as a trader in this space. So take care and cheers for now. Bye.